Thanks again for joining us
Mhm.
and being a part of the festival. And let's start off by, maybe talking about initially introducing yourself a little bit and your experience, maybe working with some drone footage.
Sure. Well, my name is John Axelrad, and I have been a film editor for over 30 years, based out of Los Angeles. I primarily work in feature film as an editor, although I've done television, I've done some documentary, and I do photography, still photography on the side. It's kind of my creative hobby. So I have an affinity for beautiful photography and creative photography. And some of the drone footage that I've seen as of late is just mesmerizing, for its beauty and scale, but the creativity that goes into it. And I'm always excited when I work on movies that incorporate drone footage. Me as an editor, for me, it's just something that adds so much scope and scale to a film. It has a practical purpose. It could also add geography. So to understand where things are and people are, but it just kind of opens the film up and makes it feel like it has such more of a bigger budget than it may actually have. So I'm mesmerized at the technology of getting steady drone footage and some of the intricate camera moves that drones are capable of achieving. It's funny because I bought a drone, or actually was gifted a drone maybe about 7, 8 years ago for the holidays, and I tried it and I crashed it on my neighbor's roof right out of the box. So I don't know if that's something that I'm going to be doing much of, but I do appreciate people who know what they're doing.
That story is uh, it mirrors a bunch of other stories. A lot of people have that same experience, so don't feel like you're the only one that have had that has that happen. So,
Good.
um, but yeah. So now talking about perspectives and stuff. When you work on a film and you have the drone footage at your disposal, and you have the different angles and stuff, and you're tasked with the overall flow of a piece.
Mm.
Um, is it is it challenging to kind of work it in there, or is it more difficult to visualize the story with not because you have the drone footage, or can you expand on that?
Well, I think it's if it's well thought out and well planned. I mean, the director, cinematographer, um, first AD, script supervisor. I mean, if it's storyboarded in a way where it's actually important for the story, and when it's actually useful, when it's actually thought out of, hey, we need this shot here, then it's not a problem. It's a problem only if they're like, hey, we have a drone. Let's just get some footage for this scene of two people talking. Uh, that makes it a little more difficult to strategize of how to incorporate it, where it should go. So it really depends on the material. It depends on the scene. Depends on the content and really what you want to say with the drone footage. Sometimes it's great for establishing shots or just to use even as transition pieces for mood and texture. But within a scene, it's got its purpose. And I've worked on films where an aerial drone shot was actually necessary for the story.
Yeah, it like again, it adds that different dimension, or it adds the a different aspect of a story, if you want to put it in there. So so yeah, that one of the things that um, some of our the attendees at the festival are aspiring filmmakers or students. And so they're looking, they're using drones, or the content creators that want to make a short film, and everybody wants to try to be as professional looking as possible. As a professional editor yourself, how are you able to tell the difference between like short film that is professionally edited and one that's kind of thrown together? Hey, we got a drone, let's take a picture of these two people talking, kind of a situation.
Well, I mean, there are some amateur filmmakers that are very good editors and very good filmmakers. But you can usually tell and separate the professionals from the amateurs when the editing isn't fully thought out. Editing should help propel a story. It should, in most cases, be invisible. In cases where the editing calls attention to itself, you really need to know what you're doing. You need to know what the rules are so you can break them and do them in an artistic and coherent way. So people who don't really have a firm grasp yet on editing, I find the rhythm, the pace is choppy, but more significantly, it tends to interfere in the storytelling, and it isn't very smooth. It's there isn't a cause and effect. There isn't a build. It doesn't help support character arc. Doesn't help propel the plots, the plot points. And then again, to throw in drone footage when it's not appropriate, it just kind of can take you out of a story, because all of a sudden you're like, whoa, what am I looking at? Oh, this is a drone. This is cool. But then you're not invested anymore in the story. I worked on a film called Ad Astra, which is a science fiction movie with Brad Pitt, and there's a big lunar rover chase. Um, so they're chasing on the moon. Now, granted, this is all visual effects, but it became very clear we needed the equivalent of a drone shot. We couldn't send a drone up to the moon, but visual effects did an aerial of this rover chase, lunar rover chase, and it was needed because we needed to show geography of where the moon pirates were coming from, where our hero vehicle was going. And so we needed to cut a few times to the above aerial, which would have been a drone if this was shot on Earth. And in those cases, it was just very natural in the flow of things. It can be used very effectively in chase scenes, in action scenes. So it just needs to be thought out and storyboarded.
Yeah. So, the kind of word to the wise, or of advice is to plan it out. Don't just kind of slap it together, or don't just use it just because you have it, kind of a thing.
Yeah.
Right? Use it for a purpose.
Exactly.
And then, so in your opinion, and in your experience also, what should filmmakers and content creators be looking for or focusing on when creating content? Like what's something that they, if they say, I want to make a film, or I want to do a short video on this, what's something that you could maybe suggest that they focus on to kind of become successful, or make a successful short?
Right. Well, I think having a unique voice is probably first and foremost. I think producers, studios, those in charge of hiring, they're always looking for a fresh take on material. So someone who isn't too out there, or too uncommercial, but is right on that edge where you're artistic and bold enough to take chances and to tell a story in a very unique way. Because I do think there's audience fatigue, seeing the same material over and over again. And even though studios like to make sequels, oh, this was a success, let's do it again and again. It can come back to bite them if the material isn't constantly fresh and innovative. So I think first and foremost, you want to have quality stories and things that whether it be from an entirely different perspective or a unique take on an old story, but then also to have a very unique vision um, and a filmmaking voice that makes your film stand out from others, and even a short film. A good friend of mine who is my assistant editor was asked to edit a short movie called Whiplash, and it was Damien Chazelle's foray into filmmaking, and he edited the short film that was brilliant, and it was something that was unlike many films of its kind. It really stood out for its editing and its unique approach to editing. That was a situation where the editing stood out. Tom Cross was the editor. And then when they made the feature film, he won the Academy Award for it.
Yeah, like you were saying, the idea of having that thought out or having a purpose and understanding how these you're going to get to the ending from the beginning, kind of a thing, and make that flow happen. I think that's important for aspiring filmmakers and those kind of things. One of the things I wanted to ask you, you mentioned earlier about cut, in reference to cuts, especially cutting to drone shots and stuff like that. And just, this is kind of an out of the blue question, but is that something that, is there a trick or is there a suggested thing of how somebody might cut, and transition from effectively between like a regular shot into maybe a drone shot or some kind of larger establishing shot or something with a drone?
Yeah, I mean, it all comes down to purpose and being pre-planned. I think a lot of times you see in feature films drone shots being used as transitions before a scene starts or at the end of a scene. Sometimes the film I'm working on right now, it's used as kind of a final pullback. I've actually worked on a few films where the last shot of the film kind of pulls back and floats in the sky to kind of give you this grand finale sense. But throughout a film, it can work in many different ways. I mean, again, for action scenes, I think it's pretty fascinating and very helpful for action scenes. I mean, the camera can go in places where never really been before. And the agility that some drone camera work, to even get in tight and close up and pull out. So drones don't always have to be these wide aerials and majestic beauty shots. They can be very useful in crafting a scene together. And one of the films that was in the festival, I thought was brilliant in its use of what I call like micro drone imagery, where it was really in tight and very tight and close on people and flying around. And so in that sense, I would use that kind of footage if I was cutting any scene that had activity, action to it. It would almost replace punching out to a wide shot, which is very common when you're cutting action. Now, if you're just doing a dialogue scene between two people, it may be a little more challenging to cut to drone footage or aerials. But I think a combination of a very good director of photography and director and storyboarding to strategically decide when and how to use drone material is important.
Ultimately, planning is the key, and having that vision already. One of the last questions I need to ask, just because, like I said, we have a lot of aspiring filmmakers and students and stuff, and even with drones, just in the drone community, with people just wanting to shoot, videos for real estate projects or just some little side project or family films or something. Everybody always asks about editing software. What's the best software to use? What's the best, what should we use? And just in your experience, I know you use high-end equipment and high-end software now, but I mean, any thoughts or anything about, there's not even product plugging or anything like that, but just the idea of advice on looking for editing software or something that might be effective for users on the end?
There's plenty of new players and very established players. It seems that the younger generation is really gravitating to Adobe Premiere, which is very powerful software, and the advantage of being able to interface it with Adobe After Effects. The whole Adobe Creative Cloud works as a complete package. DaVinci now has editing software. It's a little more geared towards their coloring solutions. Um, there's the old standby of Apple's Final Cut Pro, which has kind of fallen out of favor since it went a little more consumer. For me personally, I am 100% Avid Media Composer, which has been around the longest, and I think it's fallen out of favor somewhat with the newer generation of filmmakers because of its cost. Um, it used to be extremely expensive. I mean, I learned this software back in the 1990s, and when there was all sorts of other companies like Dvision and Editflex and Montage, and they all went out of business. Lightworks, I think Lightworks is still around, but Avid is one of the legacy editing platforms. And what I love about it is that it's really built to track film, where back in the day when we were editing, we were also still conforming work print along with editing digitally. We would take the digital file and Avid would spit out a list to conform to the codes printed on physical film. It still does all that kind of tracking. It's very robust in its multi-user sharing situation. We can share projects and be working together in the same project. But most importantly for me, it's got proprietary software where the script, the line script, is imported into the Avid, and you can actually have an editing interface where you're looking at the script supervisor's line script and able to click on a line of dialogue and instantly see all the takes of dialogue for that one line. And that was something that Avid bought from Editflex way back when Editflex was going out of business. And they're the only software maker that has that. And for that reason alone, I can't think of leaving Avid. And Avid is still very established in the professional feature filmmaking and television world. It's very entrenched on the high end. And the thing is, it's affordable. I know I'm not supposed to be doing a plug, but you can get a software only version of it, and they've redesigned the interface. It's more of Adobe Premiere like in its new design. But yeah, I hope people would consider it because it's very robust software.
Yeah, from what I've seen of Avid and the newer versions and incarnations, it does have a very Premiere Pro, yeah, Adobe Premiere kind of vibe to it. Whereas it's interesting, whereas Final Cut went to the iMovie, yeah, kind of perspective rather than to, it left the Premiere Pro look and went to the, yeah, iMovie. So it's kind of interesting, but yeah, I get that a lot, and I get, I run into in the drone messaging boards and groups and stuff, and everybody's, usually asking some kind of editing software, what's out there, what's available, and a lot of these fly by night little apps that are out there, and it's like, maybe not for quality,
Well, yeah, but either, Premiere Pro is used widely, but if you really want to future editing and want to be in the film business or in television, understanding Avid Media Composer is very important because that's really 95% of shows use that platform.
Yeah, I agree. Well, I thank you for your time. Thank you for sharing your insight with us, and thank you for supporting and helping the festival as one of the judges.
That was my pleasure. I really enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun.
And yeah, that the information you gave is great for everybody. So thanks a lot.
Right. Yeah, it was a pleasure talking to you today, Jay. So thanks for the interview.
Yeah, thanks for the time, and thanks for helping out. I really appreciate it.